Hey everyone, it's Monique Renewed. Welcome back to another video. So this week's video I will be talking about whether or not fat is really the enemy when it comes to weight loss and fat loss, my history with having gestational diabetes and being pre-diabetic when I was younger, and a few facts about carbs, how carbs actually play a role when it comes to losing weight and fat loss. If you are new to my channel or new to these type of videos that I've been making lately, I recently uploaded a video about how I lost 30 pounds. Last year I worked really hard to get some weight off of me after a year or so after pregnancy, and I'm not quite at my goal weight yet. I have been going up and down with the weight. I decided to kind of stop tracking my calories and not really pushing myself hard as I used to. The weight has been fluctuating as to be expected with any type of weight loss, but I've been doing a lot of research when it comes to carbs and fats and reading some books and reading some articles, and there are a lot of interesting facts out there that I wish I knew about last year when I was losing weight. So I wanted to share that with you guys and a bit about my background and my struggle right now. So like I said, last year I did lose about 30 pounds through diet and exercise. My main focus has been caloric intake and increasing my protein. I haven't really been mindful about carbohydrates. Also, I was focusing on, reducing fat or keeping fat at a limit. So even though I lost the weight, lingering issue that I've always had since I was younger is holding fat in my midsection. I did have 2 kids, but I'm not even going to blame the kids on that, because there are a lot of people who, when they give birth, their stomach goes back to how it was before. Whereas for me, I've always had a bit of a pudgy midsection. I never really had a flat stomach, and also like love handles. And I've been doing a lot of reflecting about my past and why this might be a lingering issue for me. A lot of people call this skinny fat as the term. Generally, it describes somebody that is petite or has like skinnier limbs. Like, as you can see, my arms are quite like bony. I don't hold a lot of weight in my arms and my like ankles and stuff like that. But then when it comes to the midsection, there's always this problematic belly area for whatever reason. And it's like, even though you could lose a lot of weight, no matter how many crunches you do, no matter how many ab exercises you do, you can't seem to get rid of the belly fat. And this can also be due to visceral fat. Visceral fat is the fat that surrounds your organs and especially your liver, which is not good at all. Some people say that you don't need visceral fat at all, or that it should be at least 10% of your body fat. Now, for me, my visceral fat is pretty high. Currently, it's at a 5 right now. So I really want to get it down to a 2. The reason why you don't want to have a lot of visceral fat is because this can be an indicator of chronic disease later on in your life, such as diabetes, cardiovascular disease, high cholesterol, and things of that nature. Now, excess abdominal fat is not new to me, but I've always had this issue, like I said, since I was younger. I remember in high school, I was walking home because my high school was pretty close to where I lived, and there was this guy that I saw was walking along too, and he just looked at me and was like,
I can't believe you're pregnant. Why would you go and get yourself pregnant?
Like, he just assumed I was pregnant. Mind you, I did not know him, but we went to the same school, and I looked at him and was like,
I am not pregnant.
And he just would not believe me. He was like,
yes you are,
just shaming me for being pregnant. And as you know, us women, there's a lot of controversy when people assume that we're pregnant when we're not, or if we were pregnant and something happened and they get to asking questions. It's a really sensitive and touchy subject, especially when people go out the way to approach you with that. That's really crazy. And I remember another incident when I was working at Ross, the retail store, when I was younger, and I was cashiering that day, and the lady that I was ringing up had a lot of home good stuff, like, a lot of like heavy home good stuff. So I was bagging up her stuff. She wasn't mean or anything, okay, but she goes,
be careful, I don't want you to hurt the baby.
Y'all, I done got so used to it at this point. I said, I'm not pregnant. And she was just shocked, but she was like, so yeah, I've had a few embarrassing moments like that where people would just assume that I'm pregnant only because, I have a petite stature, small, skinny limbs, but yet I have this belly that is sticking out. So they just assume, oh, she must be pregnant, when that's not the case. Recently, I went on a 3-day fast a couple of weeks ago. It's called the 3-day Esther fast, where you just drink water and it's no food. I usually dread going on fast because I do not like the way that it makes me feel. It makes me feel very low energy, lethargic. Sometimes I feel like I'm about to pass out. My hands start shaking, but I tried to push through it anyways. I just knew in my mind I was going to complete it, but I didn't. The first day went well. I didn't eat anything. The second day I did have to eat something small just to hold me over because I started getting those symptoms again. You know, I was just shaking, started getting, you know, headaches. The cravings are much more intensified. I just caved in and just went ahead and had something to eat. I just had something small on the second and the third day because I felt like I could not push through it. I was reading this book called Wired to Eat. It goes into diabetes and such, and I just started thinking about my past and my medical history and about my mom. And I just thought in my mind, I'm like, do I have hypoglycemia? It's when your blood sugar dips really low, and that's kind of describes those symptoms I was getting into with the shakiness. I didn't have like anything to measure my blood sugar at the time, so I didn't know what my numbers were. So I just thought maybe I have hypoglycemia, and that could be a result of your insulin continuously raising really high, and once it goes really high, it goes down really low. So those up and down dips that you get on your insulin levels, the dip is referred to hypoglycemia, whereas the rise in insulin is referred to hyperglycemia. And you know, that is related to insulin resistance. I was just thinking about that, and then I got to thinking about my mother. My mother had type 2 diabetes, which started out as gestational diabetes when she was pregnant with me. And I remember she always warned me, you don't want to get diabetes like I have, please be careful with what you eat and stuff like that. But you know, I always had it in the back of my mind, but I'm like, I don't need to worry about that. I'm young. You know, I could basically eat whatever I want. For the most part, I was small, so I was like, I'm not gonna get diabetes. But that is such a deception. Just because you're small doesn't mean you can't get diabetes. That's not what it's about. Yes, weight helps, but diabetes has a lot to do with your carb intake. Honestly, it's not something I would wish on anyone in life. It is much so a very debilitating disease. It will take over your life and lead to other complications. I had to watch my mom suffer over the years up until she did pass away a few years ago. Just being younger, having to watch her prick her finger all the time and then inject herself with insulin, being hospitalized for her insulin levels going way up. I think one time it went up to like 600, which is crazy. Having surgery in her finger due to diabetes, having her toe amputated because of an infection that wouldn't heal. It's a lot of symptoms that go with that. She eventually developed cardiovascular diseases like high blood pressure, high cholesterol. She had insomnia, depression. It's just a host of things that come along with it once it does escalate and goes too far. And then eventually she did have end-stage renal disease, and she had to be on dialysis 3 times a week due to being diabetic and all her other complications. Thinking about her really had me also thinking about myself as well in my past history. I remember when I was pregnant with my son in 2016, when you know, when you go to the doctor and you have to take that glucose test and drink that nasty sugary drink that's pure glucose to see your tolerance for glucose. And I actually failed my glucose test, and they diagnosed me with gestational diabetes. I can't remember if they really made that much of a big deal out of it. I wasn't taking medication for it, and I don't really remember them stressing anything of importance regarding that. I can't even remember any recommendations that they made me. Maybe they did. And then it got me further thinking back, and I'm like, wait a minute. I remember when I went to my primary care doctor to get a physical exam, you know, some blood work. FYI, if you haven't seen my weight loss essentials, I will leave it up here. I did mention that prevention is probably your #1 key to health when it comes to your health. Not even just weight loss. To me, it's not just about weight loss. It's about your health as well. So going to the doctors every year to get your blood work done, to get your physical exam, just to make sure you catch anything that is happening early so you can work on either reversing it or maintaining a healthy lifestyle. I know some people are apprehensive, you know, I don't want to go to the doctor and then something is wrong with me. Well, if something's wrong with you, it's already been there. Just going to the doctor is going to help you figure out what it is and help you try to manage it. And like I was saying, then it got me thinking to like about when I was like 24, which was years and years ago. I was like, oh my gosh, my doctor told me I had pre-diabetes at one point. I know I'm laughing, but this is so crazy, like how everything was just coming back to me that I just brushed to the side because I never thought it was that serious. When I was 24, I was diagnosed with pre-diabetes based off of my A1C1, which was, I believe, at a 5.9, and the cutoff is 5.7 for not being in that range. Yeah, my doctor was like, you know you have pre-diabetes, right? And I was like, He was like, yeah, your A1C1 is pretty high. And I was just like, again, I didn't really take it that serious. And I was like, well, it's pre-diabetes, you know, it's not full-blown diabetes. But I can't even remember what my diet was. I was probably eating anything that I wanted. And, you know, growing up in a Caribbean household, I'm not gonna lie, some of those habits stuck with me throughout my life. Our diet mainly consisted of like carbs and meat. I think that's probably why my mother couldn't really understand why she had diabetes in the first place. She was like, well, I don't eat sweets, which is true. My mom was not a sweets person. She didn't eat candy and cakes, and if anything, I was eating more of that stuff than she was. So she couldn't really understand like why she had diabetes in the first place. But just because something isn't sweet doesn't mean it's not going to affect your blood sugar. You know, a lot of yams, plantains, rice, beans, and not a lot of green vegetables. I don't remember having a lot of green vegetables, you know, growing up, and I carried that into my adult life as well. And that's my husband, like I was not eating any vegetables like that. It was just carbs and meat. You know, I remember having to explain to my mom, well, like, not just about sweets, it's about like carbohydrates. You know, all that white rice turns straight into glucose and it spikes your insulin. It's hard to remove yourself from that habit that you've adjusted to for so long, especially for someone that comes from a different country. You know, when they're living in their country, they're like, well, I didn't have these issues until I came here, which is true, but it probably would have eventually caught up to you. You know, the portion sizes are not that small. The portion sizes are probably like triple, quadruple of what you should be eating as far as like the carbs. You know, they pile on the sauce bra, which is the beans and the sauce and the rice, sky high, and there's no green vegetables, and then there's like chicken, and that's their meal for like decades. So it did eventually catch up. You know, eventually I had to watch her pass away in the hospital via insulin. It was the most bizarre things I've ever witnessed in my life, to be honest. I remember she had a heart attack and she got to the hospital some way, somehow. And when we went to visit her, like on the third day that we went to visit her, she was still unconscious. And I remember the nurse came in the room, her blood sugar was still high for whatever reason. Like, I couldn't believe, I'm like, how is she not even awake? She's unconscious and her blood sugar is still high. So he gave her some insulin through her IV and she literally passed away. And you can see the monitor flatline, and I was just devastated. I mean, we knew her condition was worsening. You know, every year she would joke around and be like, oh, I'm not gonna be here with you next year. Every year she would still be here. And it's like, whatever, mom. But you never know what day it would be. And that goes for all of us. We never know what time would be our time. So that's why it's so important to take your health seriously. I know I didn't. A major contributing factor was a lack of knowledge for me. I didn't understand how the body works. I didn't understand how we metabolize micronutrients and macronutrients and the effects that it has on the body when it comes to processed foods and unprocessed foods and what they do to you. So given my family history and given my own history with having a lot of close calls with diabetes, you know, gestational diabetes and having pre-diabetes at one point, I decided to purchase a glucose monitor.
I have such anxiety about this for some reason. I think it's
I
like,
don't know what to do.
I think I'm getting like flashbacks or something.
Oh, wait.
Wait. Right here. Wait. I'm literally, wait.
You gonna keep the audio on this? Right here?
Wait, no, let me do it.
Why you acting like I'm about to do something?
Why am I so scared? Like, I'm literally sweating. Oh, that was nothing.
Error. 95. That's normal.
This is the One Touch Ultra Plus Flex, and last time I saw one of these, they did not look like this, okay? They make them super tiny now, because I remember I used to have to check my mom's blood sugar sometimes when she didn't feel like it. That's how it looks. It is so tiny, oh my gosh. But yeah, I'm gonna start seeing what effect different foods have on my blood sugar and start checking that. I've already checked one food. I made a chia seed oatmeal pudding. I made my own version of the one they have at Tropical Smoothie because I liked it so much, so I had to make my own. And 2 hours after I ate it, I checked my blood sugar. It was at 120, which is normal. So I wrote down like all the ranges, you know, when you're fasted, after you eat, to see if I'm within normal range and what will spike my blood sugar. Now, when I tried the one from Tropical Smoothie, I didn't have the monitor at that time, so I want to get it again to see what effect that it has, because I looked up the nutritional label online and it has 102 grams of carbs, which is insane for one meal. And I have to admit, after I ate that, the day that I got it, I felt super tired. So tired that I fell asleep. And I'm realizing when certain foods that are like high in carbs make you fall asleep, like make you have a dip in energy like that, that's probably your insulin levels spiking and then dipping. So I want to see what my results will be, and I want to like incorporate that on my channel, like test different foods to see what effects that it has on my body. And the reason why this is so important is because insulin is your fat fat storage hormone. Basically, every macro has a different effect on your insulin. For example, fat, although it has the highest amount of calories, you would think you have to avoid it. And this is what the health or food industry has been telling us this whole time, is that fat is the enemy. And I've been guilty of doing this too with my weight loss, getting reduced fat, everything. And I'm starting to slowly realize that maybe it's not all bad as we make it seem to be. The marketing has really indoctrinated us to think that fat is the enemy when it's probably not as much as the enemy as we think it is. So carbohydrates will produce the highest spike on your insulin. Protein will produce a moderate spike, not as high as carbs, and fat will produce the littlest to almost zero spike on your insulin. So isn't that kind of crazy how God designed our body? Although it has the highest amount of calories, it has the least spike on your insulin. That's why the keto and low carb diet is so popular and is recommended for diabetics, is because when you deplete your body of glucose, it resorts to burning fat instead for energy. If you're constantly on this up and down level with your insulin, you don't really give your body that much of a chance to deplete the glucose so it can turn to fat as its primary source of energy to burn. But the interesting thing is, when we turn to food items such as white rice, white bread, white pasta, that is stripped of its fiber, and fiber helps with the insulin spike because we can't digest fiber, and fiber doesn't cause a spike in your insulin. That's why they say it's important to eat whole foods that are rich in fiber, you know, vegetables, greens. That's why that's very important, because it minimizes a spike in your insulin. So with the excess glucose, with what your body does to it, it finds a place to store it. So that's either in your liver, which is what we were talking about with the visceral fat, or it gets converted into fat. I have been enjoying this book called Fast Like a Girl. My husband got it for me when I was doing my fast, and this has opened up my eyes a lot when it comes to female reproductive system and when it comes to fasting. According to Dr. Mindy, it is not recommended to fast during your menstrual cycle, and she recommends different types of eating plans when it's centered around your cycle. So a ketobiotic eating plan versus a more carbohydrate rich plan, depending on what time of the month it is. So it is a really interesting read. I recommend this for you women out there who want to try intermittent fasting, but you don't want to wreck your hormones, because that is a possibility, which I had no clue about. So I do want to try something different. I want to try intermittent fasting. I've intermittent fasted before, but not really like for a real extended period of time. So I want to take it like more seriously for a few weeks, and I do want to try a lower carb diet. So 100 grams of carbs a day is considered low carb, and 50 grams is considered keto. And for me, this would be net carb. That is really difficult to be on 50 carbs a day. I've tried it and I try to track it, and like literally every little thing will set you over the edge. But yeah, I want to try it out to see how that works and if that helps with the excess belly fat. I'm thinking about doing the 16-8, where you fast for 16 hours a day and then you have an 8-hour eating window. So I want to see how that works. The thing is, you have to be really consistent with it. Otherwise, your body will go back to burning glucose as energy rather than the fat. That is my plan. That's what I'm going to try to do: intermittent fast and a lower carb diet, and see how that works. And I will probably tune in back to you guys to give you my findings and results. So yeah, that is all for today's video. I hope you guys find this informational and helpful. I know I did when I was reading about this stuff. It was so crazy. Like, why did I not take that into consideration? But we live and we learn on our own times. So yeah, comment down below what would you like to see next, or what foods do you think I should test. I'm thinking about testing like my favorite foods. That will probably steer me away from eating them, like chicken wings and french fries, or like a cinnamon. Ugh, I used to love cinnamons and get them all the time, but I don't really get them like that. I wonder what spike that would have on my blood sugar. I'm not trying to push myself into diabetes with doing this, okay? So give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, share it with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.